This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you. This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my day.
Hi everybody, welcome to Life Congregational Church's stream for this Sunday. It's great to be with you, even though it's digitally with you. It's my pleasure. Today I'm going to be talking about a phrase you probably never heard before. I never heard of it before until I made it up. It's called the COVID Sabbath. I'm going to explain exactly what that refers to, and I hope by the time I'm finished that you will be encouraged and inspired to walk straight ahead, the days ahead, with a vision of the immediate future. Today's reading is from the Old Testament and the book of Leviticus, chapter 25, verses 1 and 2. And it says here, "The Lord said to Moses at Mount Sinai, 'Tell the people of Israel this, when you enter the land that I will give to you, let it have a special time of rest to honor the Lord.'" We heard good news this week. Health officials here in Australia have reported how right across the country there are only 48 people in hospitals who are there fighting COVID-19. That is a big drop from just 5 weeks ago when there was 450 people in hospitals suffering and battling from the coronavirus. Now, it's actually a 900% drop. Some good news. We're also aware that this week has marked a shift in the government, and the restrictions that we have had to walk in for the last couple of months have been untightened. And that's good. People can now start to get out to cafes, maybe pubs, restaurants, and so on, and the economy can begin its slow climb back to health. As things are coming slowly back to normal, we may be able to start to talk about a post-pandemic era. Maybe it's a little too early to look at it like that. We're still in the throes of it. There's still no vaccine. However, here in Australia, we are one of a small number of nations across the earth who are on the way back. And that's great. We thank government, we thank leaders, we thank the health officials and all those who have contributed to our quicker than expected recovery. I guess it's not too early though to start talking about lessons that we may have learnt from the pandemic season. As I've been talking about the last few weeks, the season of waiting. Today I want to talk to you about a Sabbath that we have gone through, a time of rest that the whole earth has gone through by force. We were forced into it. But today I want to talk to you about the fact that it's been good for us to have this Sabbath. I call it the COVID Sabbath. What is a Sabbath? The Sabbath is a day of rest. And I'll be sharing a little bit more about that as we go on. There's 3 lessons that I want to share with you today from this whole season that we have been going through. This forced rest. The first lesson that I believe we can learn, we can stop, take stock and learn, is that the world needs rest. I saw last week in the news that for the first time, if you live in Sydney listening to this, and you know Sydney a little bit, you would know that we have smog here. It's a big city, there's a lot of traffic on the roads, and we have, not that far from the heart of the city, we have an area called the Blue Mountains, which is all bush, beautiful area. But this area, we can't see it that clearly under normal circumstances from the city. Well, the report in the news said last week, the air quality is so good that the Blue Mountains can clearly be seen from the heart of Sydney town. This reflects a truth that whilst we've been in lockdown or near lockdown, the environment has had a rest. a rest from us. Whilst politicians often talk about jobs and the economy, they don't always talk about the impact of industry upon the environment. Now, am I sounding like a hippie, like an eco-warrior right now, a greenie? Let me tell you this, if I'm a hippie, or I'm sounding like a hippie right now, God sounded like one way back in ancient times, as far back as the time of Moses. This is what the Lord said to Moses in Leviticus chapter 25, verses 1 to 5. It says, "Tell the people of Israel this, when you enter the land I give to you, let it have a special time of rest to honor the Lord. You may plant seed in your field for 6 years, and you may trim your vineyards for 6 years and bring in the fruits. But during the 7th year, you must let the land rest. This will be a special time to honor the Lord. You must not plant seed in your field or trim your vineyards. You must not cut the crops that grow by themselves after harvest, or gather the grapes from your vines that are not trimmed." Listen, it says, "The land will have a year of rest." This became a regulation for the people to follow, to allow the land to have a rest. And God said that that rest time will be to honor Him. There's a principle there. In fact, this principle goes even further back, right to the beginning of creation of our planet. When God created our world, everything in it, He then took a rest. On the 7th day, He rested. Now we know that God lives outside of time and space. He's bigger than our time frame. But for us, He left an understanding that He took time out. He allowed Himself to be in our time space to teach us the importance of rest. But He's also made it very clear to God's people, Israel, the people of Israel, that they had to give the land a rest. Give it a break. Now, consider a report, not from ancient times, but from just last month. It emerged that air quality dramatically improved across 9 major cities in the world. These monitoring stations in places such as London, Los Angeles, discovered a dramatic improvement and a reduction of air pollution. That's the air that the people of these cities breathe. The cities were Delhi, London, Los Angeles, Milan, Mumbai, New York City, Sao Paulo, Seoul, and Wuhan. Rome also has a monitoring station, but their air quality even got worse by 30%. However, all these other 9 cities that I mentioned recorded dramatic improvements. Los Angeles, the air quality there improved by 51%, and Delhi improved by 55%. Why is that? Simply put, because of the pandemic that we are going through. The world has had to stop all its frenetic activity, reduce dramatically what it does. And by the world, I mean people, industries, workers. There's not so much traffic on the roads, you will notice. People aren't so busy getting about, flying about. Planes are off the skies, and so on. And this has helped our planet have a rest. I'm tempted to think that maybe God allowed all of this to happen to remove the strain upon our environment. And if the land needs a rest, like it's clear that it did need a rest, then how much more do we humans need a rest? So the second lesson is that we need a rest. We need a rest. Let me talk to you about the Sabbath. You might think of that as a religious term or a Hebrew term, Jewish term. Maybe the only time you've heard of Sabbath is when you listen to heavy rock and Ozzy Osbourne singing. It's part of Black Sabbath. But the Sabbath day is quite an important thing. In fact, we still are aware of it, and we still should honor that today. We don't call it the Sabbath anymore as Christians. We look upon Sunday as our day of rest. The Sabbath used to be on our Saturdays. And there are religious groups who still maintain that we have to have that as our rest day. But things changed when Christianity overtook Judaism, and many of the laws and regulations from those times were superseded because of grace. For me, it's not important that it's the Saturday that's recognized or the Sunday. The point is that we have a day where we hit the pause button and refresh. That's what the Sabbath is all about. It was a day that God set aside as a holy day, as a day that you, if you were around in ancient times, you took off from work, from activities, from responsibilities, and spent in meditation, in consideration of Him. And that would be normally spent with family around you. You could still eat, but you couldn't do a whole lot. Your activities had to be cut down. This is a healthy regulation that God set into place. And God doesn't have an ego to worry about like we do. He did not institute this day for us to sing His praises because He needs that adulation. God is complete. He's secure. He knows what is true. He doesn't need anything from anyone or anything. But it's more for our benefit because we do. We are fallen. We are sinful. We need to refocus every week on what the most important thing is in life. And that is God. It's not money. It's not relationships. It's not even falling in love. It's God. The Beatles said, love is all you need. I'm sorry, John, Paul, God is all you need. Hey, I like the Beatles, but they're not always right. Our relationship with God needs a Sabbath, a day of rest and of worshiping God. You may be saying now, the Sabbath now? Not only is this guy a hippie, but a Jewish hippie. What's with this fella? Stop and think. If you're an Aussie watching this, you know in our society, we don't really have a day of rest. The retail industry in particular has been pushing for years and trying to flex its muscles and saying we need to be open more hours, more days. If you look across our calendar and think about sacred days, where are they? Yes, we can say Christmas is a sacred day, Anzac Day is sacred, Easter is sacred, yes. But really, on all of those occasions, the shops will open. Anzac Day is like a half day. But retail industries push and now they can open their doors. And the hospitality industry the same. They can open their doors around lunchtime. Really, if we think about our calendars, our Aussie calendars, what is one day where things, and I mean businesses, workplaces, factories, cinemas, restaurants are not open? I can think of one, Good Friday. But even then, the rugby league has muscled its way in there, and now we have a Good Friday game. I like rugby league, but I don't think we need a game on that day of all days. That is a really sacred day for us Christians. And watching a bunch of blokes in shorts smash into each other, which I normally enjoy, by the way, on Good Friday is not a good mix in my eyes and in the eyes of most Christians. We don't need it. Move it over to this Saturday. What's the need to have that on Good Friday? McDonald's opening its doors as much as possible. Think about it. Do you really need to be eating a Big Mac on every day of the calendar? Really? I've just enjoyed last year as a year of fasting from fast food, my daughter and I. I didn't have any McDonald's, any Hungry Jacks, any KFC for a whole year, and I felt good. I made the mistake in this January of going to McDonald's, buying 2 Big Macs, knocking them down, and my stomach, with utterings and groanings too deep and mysterious to explain, told me, don't ever do that again. Really think about it. Why are we so busy? What's the importance of that? It's not that healthy. Why don't we take Sundays out as a time to really focus on God? Yes, we go to church, and that's a given. But even when we're home at the end of the day or in the afternoon, why not take that time out to really think about God, to pray, to talk to Him? Even if you go out to a park or to the beach, what a great opportunity to really spend in meditation with God. I know we need to have our recreation, but we need to recharge our batteries spiritually. And if you get that as a priority, everything else will flow in your life from that. You will be blessed. God will answer your prayers. Finances, relationship with others, all of that will be healed and whole because you took the most important thing in your life, the relationship with God, and made it a priority. That's a principle that God has put for us to take part of. And lastly, I'll finish with this. Lesson 3. Our expectations need a rest. The pandemic, which stopped the world, gave us an opportunity to gain something very important. Perspective. You and I probably have a better perspective and a better understanding of how important simple things are. I mentioned the beach before. Do you miss the beach now, going to the beach? Do you miss sitting in a cafe? In a crowded cafe or a crowded restaurant with plenty of atmosphere? Are you tired of being at home? But whilst you're at home, you've appreciated being able to engage with the family members because they're not all running out to do things and you're not running out to do things. You've had to stay home and maybe get to know your loved ones better. Maybe you're looking forward just to be with friends again. Your girlfriends, your mates. Just going out shoulder to shoulder. And not just 2 people, but 4, 5, 6. These things, I guarantee to you right now, you are not taking for granted. We live in an affluent society and we take a lot for granted. We feel entitled. And that's a word that's been bandied around right now. It's quite annoying. But it is a good word in this context. You and I have a sense of entitlement. And right now, this pandemic has told us, you have no rights. And guess what? That's not a bad thing. In the 80s, I traveled to the Philippines. I spent a year there planting 2 churches. The first church we planted grew to about 50 people. It was a great church. Many of the people that made up that congregation came from what was called a barrio. Still is called a barrio. Barrio is kind of like a slum. There's shanties, there's cheap housing, often built by the people. They don't have to pay rent. They just live in an area, and it's very cheap. But they live in each other's pockets, and they form communities. Our church had many people from one particular barrio, and they were a good community, good people. I was amazed at how poor they are, but yet how happy they were. They were content. It's the only word I can think of. Sure, things weren't perfect for them. They needed more finances, and they could have done with it. They knew they needed it. But their lives were not typified by depression and anger and frustration. When you visited them, they were warm people, happy people. And there's one day that I will always remember. I walked in there, and there were lots of children in this barrio. And when we'd come, we'd do some singing and dancing, and we would entertain the kids, and then we'd preach. But one time I came in, and I could see already the kids were forming a circle. There was some activity going on. The kids were whooping and yelling and laughing, and I didn't know what they were looking at until I got closer and closer. And right in the middle, there was a brother and sister, and they had, on the end of a string, a big fat bug, a black bug with wings, a big thing, unwieldy flight it was involved in. And they were holding it by the end of the string. They caught this thing, wrapped a string around it, and now it was a toy. It was entertainment. It was fun. And all the kids were enjoying and wanting to go. Not long after that, I visited Australia, and I was in the shopping centre, and I saw one child in a toy shop at the time yelling at his mum, wanting some huge toy worth maybe $80, a lot of money, angry that he wasn't getting it. I remember feeling reverse culture shock, thinking those kids back in the Philippines have nothing. This one has so much. Unhappy. The kids in the Philippines happy. Really, what is your expectation right now? If you feel like you're missing out, what is that thing that you're missing out? And are you really missing out? If you worry about having more money, something material like a car, a bigger house, more furniture, the latest device, the latest app, you've got to have it. Do you really got to have it? What are your expectations of relationships, of church? Are people supposed to be totally aware of your problems? Does the world revolve around you? Does it revolve around me? No. The sooner we stop thinking like that, the better it will go for us. Real contentment comes from putting first things first. And the thing which is first above all is relationship with God. Maybe as a result of this pandemic, we will stop taking for granted small but meaningful opportunities, like a drive to the country, like a swim at the beach, or a night out at the movies, or just simply holding hands with our loved ones again and walking down the street without people looking at you as if you're doing some awful thing, committing a crime. There's a day coming soon when we're going to look back on this pandemic and maybe think of it as a bad dream, a nightmare. However, I would encourage you not to do that, but to look back on it and remember the lessons that we learnt along the way. Because quite possibly, God has sent this to stop the world, cause all of us to hit a pause button and to refresh, to give the world a rest, the planet and the environment a well-needed break. And for us, as we stop and think, to consider our expectations. Are we so entitled? Do we need the things that we have? Or have we discovered in this waiting season the things that really matter? Family, love, belonging, being part of a fellowship, and most of all, our relationship with our Heavenly Father who loves us and watches over us. God bless you, church. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you here virtually online next week. Thank you.